Over the month of July, my focus will be teaching those learners that are often forgotten about in the communicative ELT classroom, introverts. As one myself, I identify with some of the struggles that our quieter learners face in the classroom, particularly in the young learner classroom, which tends to be full of noisy games and singing and dancing and acting. So every day I'll be releasing a new short video with my reflections and an actionable tip. Stay tuned. Teaching Introverts Part 1. In the classroom, we notice students who are kicking the chair leg or huffing and puffing over their notebook, or the one who's making a funny noise in an attempt to distract the others. But we forget about the quiet ones. We assume that they're happily getting on with things, but that's not always true. And even if they're not struggling, there are certain things we do that can create anxiety in introverted students. Step out of your comfort zone, people say on LinkedIn. Teachers push quieter students out of their comfort zones all the time. In ELT, we emphasize social engagement. We push our students to speak and share ideas and answers, and in a language they're not confident in. While some students will comfortably shout out an answer, it may take others several minutes to work up the courage just to raise their hand. Today's tip is to make a list of the names of your quieter students. When planning lessons, refer back to this list and reflect on how much you think these students will enjoy the activities you're planning. Being put on the spot. Some people seem to relish the challenge of being asked a question or asked to do something out of the blue, but for most people it's an uncomfortable situation. Think back to your school days. Did your teacher pick on students to come to the board and solve a problem? I don't remember that happening at my school, but teachers did ask a question and then pick someone to answer, seemingly randomly. I absolutely hated this, because even if I knew the answer, it would disappear as soon as my name was called. In most cases, the teacher would expect those who knew the answer to raise their hand. That was fine. I don't think I ever put my hand up voluntarily when I was at school. Now I often go to ELT conferences and I still get that uncomfortable feeling when a presenter asks for volunteers, or worse, chooses volunteers from the audience. So what's the alternative? Well, first, provide plenty of warning. Tell students that you'll be inviting someone to answer. 2, give students a choice of how to answer. Perhaps a student can write their answer on a mini whiteboard instead of speaking in front of the class. And 3, allow students a pass option for answering questions or participating. Do you put your learners on the spot? And can you think of any alternatives to support your introverted learners? Let me know in the comments. Come back tomorrow for the next tip. Dynamics. I talked about the pressure that can be placed on introverted students in whole class activities, especially if they're asked to speak or give an answer without warning. I know it seems simple. The teacher asks a question and then chooses a student to answer. If the student knows the answer, there shouldn't be an issue, right? Except there's a lot more going on. The fear that the teacher might ask you to speak can build up from the beginning of an activity or lesson, or even before the lesson starts. Just knowing that this is a possibility can be enough to make the lesson a stressful experience. This is why it's so important to use a variety of classroom dynamics, including individual work, pair work, small groups, and whole class activities, in that order. Start by giving students a chance to think about and practice the new language on their own. This quiet time allows necessary thinking time and for the student to feel comfortable using the language. Then invite them to share their answers or ideas with a partner quietly. A chance to voice your ideas in a non-threatening environment is really helpful. After that, perhaps you could have students switch partners and repeat, or get together in small groups. And finally, when asking students to share with the whole class, make it an invitation rather than a demand. With other activities, allow students to choose whether they want to work alone or with someone else. Nomination, yes or no? Do you use nomination? Nomination refers to naming a student to answer a question or provide an answer when correcting an exercise. There are different models of nomination. Random nomination, where the teacher chooses someone randomly. Free nomination, where the teacher invites students to raise their hands and chooses a volunteer. Or you may keep a record of who's already answered to try to make sure everyone gets an equal opportunity to speak. And finally, there's peer nomination. There are also digital tools to help with nomination, like name pickers, or you could have students' names on lollipop sticks. But none of these solve the problem of the stress that nomination can cause, especially random nomination. For introverts, being called upon suddenly can produce high levels of anxiety. With peer nomination, younger students are likely to choose their friends or extroverted learners. Ordered nomination may be better, as students will know when they will be called upon, but this can also result in students only paying attention when they know they have to answer. What types of nomination do you use? Which strategies do you think will support your introverted learners? Let me know in the comments. Preparation and thinking time. Preparation and thinking time is really helpful for introverted learners. This is because when we're confident about our answers or ideas and how to express them, we don't actually mind speaking up. I talked a bit about thinking time in video 3, where I suggested that giving students time to think and practice with a partner first can help. Make sure students have time to think before asking them to speak. Think, pair, share can be a useful dynamic here. But it's also important to make sure that the task is clear and that students know exactly what to do and that they have sufficient time to prepare. The first time students do a new type of activity, they'll need more preparation time. As they get used to the activity, they'll require less. For longer speaking activities, you could provide some prompts or questions to help guide students. With lower levels, you could also give them a worksheet or a graphic organizer and allow them to make notes or draw pictures to help them remember what they want to say. This is useful for all learners and not just introverts. Students who are not confident speakers will also benefit. Routines. The English language classroom can be quite a stressful place for some quieter children, especially if we plan a variety of different activities which change from day to day. Routines help introverted children by providing them with a sense of structure, familiarity and predictability, and this can help them feel more comfortable and more in control of the classroom environment. Having a routine for entering the classroom and beginning the lesson can lower that affective filter and help introverted children feel more at ease. Having routines for transitions help children know what's coming next. When they have a clear plan and understand what's expected of them, children feel more prepared to engage in classroom interactions. This sense of preparedness empowers them to express themselves, share their ideas, and actively participate in discussions without feeling overwhelmed. Routines for pair and group work develop important social skills and can also help introverted children feel more comfortable working with others. Here's a tip. If there are changes to your routine, pre-warn your students so that they expect the change, and also expose them to any new activities gradually. What routines do you use with your young learners? Let me know. Today's tip is about the classroom space. Have you ever thought about whether your classroom is set up to suit extroverts or introverts? In ELT, we love a U-shape or a horseshoe desk layout, but this can actually be detrimental to introverted students who have nowhere to hide. But that doesn't mean traditional rows are better either. The most inclusive layout, which works for all learners, wherever they are on the introvert-extrovert continuum, is flexible seating. If you can have some desks in groups, others set up for pairs, and maybe a quiet corner with a couple of cushions or stools, your classroom will be more flexible. If you allow your students to choose how they want to work, they can choose the most appropriate seating. It can also help to have any classroom materials in places where students can get them without having to ask. For similar reasons, you can have visual aids that allow students to ask for help without attracting attention. For example, coloured post-its that they can place on their desk. Finally, avoid shadowing students. Give them space. One tip, instead of hovering over students or just staying at the front, place a chair somewhere else in the classroom and sit there while students are doing an activity. It will be less intimidating for the students than if they have to walk to the front of the class in front of everyone. Praise. Praise can be a double-edged sword for introverts. All students want and need praise. Effective praise is based on a student's effort and behaviour, and it should be as specific as possible. We want to praise students when they try hard or take risks. But with introverts, we need to be careful about how and when we do this. Praise should preferably be given privately. Avoid praising an introvert in front of the whole class, as that can just be mortifying and make that student uncomfortable and stressed. Likewise, avoid public celebrations of student achievement. I'm going to tell you a secret. At my primary school, the new head teacher introduced a weekly congratulations ceremony in front of the whole school. For several Fridays in a row, I pretended to be sick in order to avoid going to school, just in case it was my turn. That's the effect such public displays of praise can have. So encourage students privately, but also praise them for any risks they take, however small. Remember that a risk for an introvert might just be volunteering to give an answer or sharing an idea in a group task. Come back tomorrow for the next tip. Rethink participation. What does participation mean? Evaluate students on engagement rather than participation. Participation doesn't just mean raising your hand or answering a question. There are lots of different ways in which students can engage with the material and with their classmates. We need to value skills like being a good listener or writing a thoughtful response, as well as offering answers and joining in speaking activities. You can also give students opportunities to participate without raising their hand. For example, you could have everyone write their idea on a mini whiteboard, or if you have digital resources, they could participate using them. Even simple games like Kahoot can be a way of encouraging participation in the classroom, and tools like Flipgrid also allowed them to participate from home. Finally, avoid grading or valuing participation over progress. Students are there to learn English, and this is what they should be evaluated on. Even if your report card has a section for participation, give your introverted learners a good mark if they are clearly engaged. So here are my last few tips. Provide varied opportunities for feedback, not just oral. Allow students to demonstrate their learning in different ways. Why not use a Padlet board where students can add their ideas later on? With Padlet, students can add text, images, audio, video, and they may feel more comfortable speaking from the comfort of their own home. With younger students, you can also allow them to draw their answers or point to the correct answer. Use flashcards and posters, or you could even have them mime or act out their answer if they don't feel comfortable speaking. Finally, try not to force introverts to share personal information. Instead, they can share information about a mascot or a favourite character. I hope you've enjoyed this series of short videos. If you have, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Inspiring Inquiries.